The other day, Music Business Worldwide reported the Economics of Music Streaming inquiry to be undertaken by the British government's Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee will analyze business models operated by streaming firms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and Google Play. In it, Julian Knight states, while streaming is a growing and important part of the music industry, contributing billions to global wealth, its success cannot come at the expense of talented and lesser-known artists. Here with his thoughts on this, on the inquiry, and to look at the numbers is Sam Tall. How you doing, Sam?
I'm good, Peter. How are you?
Good, good. So is it time the streaming services change their payout model? And I know going back, people for years have discussed Spotify, where your money is going out to the big pool, where it's the top 1% artists, as opposed to who you are listening to, because there are many that are listening to the indie or the smaller artists, and they feel that those artists should be compensated more fairly. Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
So at some point previously in our conversations here at Music Industry City, I've addressed my feelings about a user-centric payment model. I still very much support that. My thoughts about that haven't changed. If anything, they've galvanized even further. And this, is obviously represented in the conversations that are being had around independent artists, rights ownership, how labels and platforms are paying under contracts, as well as just royalty rates and average revenue per user being a driver of how artists are making money. With conversations around the equity for artists in a situation like this, where a government is just making a formal inquiry. It's not an investigation. It's not considering legislation, but it's the first step. And it's really taking a concerted legislative look, regulatory look at the way that these payments are handled. Now, obviously, we see Deezer has done experiments in this in the past. It's been bandied about for, the better part of the last 5 or 6 years. The user-centric payment model, for those who don't know, essentially just means that for every dollar you put in, that dollar is broken out amongst what you actually listen to, as opposed to what the platform as a whole is listening to. So, for example, if you pay $9.99 to Spotify, we'll just call it $10, and you listen to 10 tracks, each one of those tracks is going to get 1/10 of your money. If you listen to 1,000 tracks, or you listen to one track 1,000 times, your money's going to be split among those 1,000 plays and then allocated to the artists accordingly. This really favors independent artists, smaller artists, where the audiences tend to be very, very committed and very deep in the trenches with that artist, and not so deep with pop artists. Maybe they have a couple of plays here and there for Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, stuff that's like new and important to know from a pop culture perspective, but the bulk of that listening time is spent on the stuff that they're passionate about, as opposed to the stuff that's just popular. There's some kind of concern from the upper levels that suggests that this then defavors the larger artists that do have larger fan bases and don't have deep listening as much as they have broad listening. But frankly, is that as much of a problem? I don't think that we can look at the $1 million a week that WAP is generating on streaming platforms and say, yeah, we should protect that. I'm not saying they shouldn't make money. It's a popular song. It's a fun listen, and it's worth rewarding ingenuity of that nature. Sure. But the thing that we don't need to worry too much about is, are Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion making enough money? We need to worry about whether independent artists, as the member of parliament in that quote suggested, that don't have the same opportunity. And right now they're disadvantaged under a pool model. So I'm very optimistic that someday this is going to come about. I think it's well overdue. It's not even just high time. It's well overdue. And frankly, it has the ability to help a sort of a middle class of artists continue to arise. Now, we've seen this kind of develop in the years since the advent of streaming and the popularization of it. Now we're seeing conversations about, are we reaching peak streaming? Are we getting to the point where there are fewer and fewer new customers and we have to talk about what the average revenue per user is instead? But that average revenue per user is going to all kind of dump towards the top of that rank if we don't do something to change the system and the way that it works. We can't rely on the companies to do this themselves. We can't expect the labels to approve something like this proactively. It's not in their interest. We're going to have to do this, I think, from a regulatory perspective and fight for sort of the equity for artists in a system like this.